This is the Global Broadcasting Service, serving remote outposts since 1928.
Hi, everyone. Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail.
Caramba, we have something really big for you today.
Welcome, foolish mortals.
Now then, hang on to them hats and glasses, because this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
This is the DBC Pod with Phil Schoen and Jason Dodge. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's pod. This is a weekend review of December 25th, 2021. And because I know you celebrate Christmas, Phil, I'm going to tell you Merry Christmas. And
Merry Christmas to you as well, and I appreciate that. And for those that don't celebrate, I hope it was a nice Saturday for you.
Yes, or at least maybe you get some time off because a lot of people celebrate Christmas.
Yeah, true.
You get a nice weekend. So we've got a good show today. We're going to talk about. I think the cold open is because it is kind of Christmas. Maybe I think Matt actually meant it this way. Ghost of Christmas Past, right?
Yes.
So we think about the yesteryear of Disney and what we wish was back again, type of thing. So I listened to a bit of this on Matt's podcast. I'm saving it for a trip that I have to make. I'm backlogging some of his podcasts. So if you haven't yet to listen to a friend of the show, Matt Pato's podcast, it's not very date required because it's not like current events and news.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's an awesome podcast to download all of them and just work your way through their backlog because it'll be just as relevant today as it was a month ago or whatever. So
And I don't know if you've mentioned it in the past, but the name of the actual podcast is the Happily Everything Disney podcast. So you can
only reason why I don't do it because I get tongue-tied every time I say it. That's my problem, not Matt's problem. That being said, what's the premise that he introduced?
So they were talking about sort of their history with Disney parks and going back to like their first trips and stuff like that. So he had this topic of the ghosts of the Disney parks past, and basically what is something that when you went, whether it was your first trip or one of your early trips, that really sort of sucked you into Disney and is no longer around, but that you would like to see come back or that you wish it was around, that sort of thing. So what's a kind of that ghost of Disney that, you know, is still in your mind and still is something you attach with your fondness for Disney parks visits, but is no longer around?
I it's tough for me to have one because I went to Disney probably the last time before an adult when I was 11, 12 years old, maybe. Mm-hmm. We never did Disney vacations. We were visit the grandparents and then one day at the Magic Kingdom, or one day at Magic Kingdom, and then we drove to Cape Canaveral and did other touristy things. So we never did like a week at Disney. So I don't have like super ingrained memories. When I went back as the first time with as an adult, it was more of impressions and feelings of like I kind of remember, Adventureland and all this other stuff. However, there is one memory that is stuck in my head, and I couldn't remember where it was, even if it was Disney or not. And I kind of I figured out my memory. It's one of like the Circle Vision type theaters where it was 360 degrees of movies, and it was really awesome. And I just remember standing there with my dad, just watching this thing and being like, "This is really cool," and I would like to see some of that come back. I don't know if I need it to come back, but it's a really cool memory. Just so I can I'd like to relive it just to make solve that mystery. Was it really that or was that a dream? I don't know. What about you? Because you have more memories as
so we went several times when I was a kid, and we were usually we would go down to Florida to see relatives, but there was a good chunk that was for Disney as well. So I'm sure everyone will be shocked to know that mine involves Epcot.
Shocked.
But if there's something that I could come back either as its form as it was before, or just something around like bringing back the Imagination Pavilion to its former glory, whether that's bringing back the old ride and the Rainbow Bridge. I would also love to see the Dreamfinder and Figment walk around characters. That's definitely one of my memories, is meeting them when I was a kid. Or just updating it to something new, but making it sort of like one of the flagship areas or attractions of Epcot.
I thought you were going to say the center of Future World because it's long gone and a mystery and it's still now a construction zone. I thought you were going to make a joke. Never mind. It's because you could do anything for this kind of question, and it's funny when I went back in 2015, there was so much stuff that had just opened within the last, I guess, 2 years of that date. Flight of Passage was just about to open up; it wasn't there quite yet. New Fantasyland Phase 2 was just wrapping up right before I went there, and I had no idea I was going to like a whole new major Disney, especially when I went back a year and a half later. There was so much new stuff that I just took for granted because I was like, oh, it's just here. So, in any case, let's move on. The Disney Comeback Index had an update this week. Matt got back from his trip.
Yep.
And I'm flopping it here on the screen. We're at 77.3%. And for those of you that are listening and not watching, we had a bunch of updates. Savor of the Savannah, Wild Africa Trek Tour, Up Close with the Rhinos Tour, Disney Keys to the Kingdom Tour, Tram Cars Return to the Magic Kingdom. I think a big one was the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular. If we still did the news, that would be a big news item that we could talk about. Storybook Dining. And here's a caveat. The only reason why I bring this up is because I booked it for my trip. Hopefully my trip still goes forward. And Florida's not a ravaged wasteland of Omicron, and we're all scared about going down there. But I wanted to bring it up because I did my ADRs last Monday. If you remember, I was doing my ADRs about 9 hours or a few hours before that the podcast went up. And I got everything I wanted except for Space 220. And I don't think I'll actually get Space 220 because none of that's going to, unless there's some cancellations, and they were leading up to last week, which I expect that's what's going to happen. Here I am with my travel agent, and she said, wow, these things are really difficult. You're not going to get everything. Ha-ha, I got everything.
Well, good job.
Yes, so I should be a travel agent because apparently I have the magic touch or something of that nature. Okay, so that being said, I think we're going to hit our first topic, which is going to tie into a lot of different things, right? So last week we talked about how do we actually plan our trips, days to the park, and how do we kind of get the most and the traditions of our families, that type of thing. And the reason why I think that we do the things that we do a certain way is because it helps us recapture the magic, right? So not only do we think this is the best way to do the parks, we have the most fun, it also breeds nostalgia within the trip because we did it the same way last time and the time before that and the time before that, right? And Disney's all about the magic. It's all about recreating those points of last vacations, and it's just every single trip is being reinforced by the last one, right?
Right.
So this week, we're going to talk about something that kind of popped up on Discord, and it's the loss of magic and a lot of the frustration. Now, with the world's current situation, a lot of that kind of has a bit part to it because there's a lot of mental health issues out there, depression and general things like that everybody should be aware of. But when it comes to specifically Disney planning, there's a lot lost. Now, you and I, Phil, are both spreadsheet planners. We are everything down to a tier. So we're gonna reference a lot of pre-COVID Disney planning. 180 days for ADR, 60 days plus for FastPass, or 30 days if you're staying off property, and the whole general cadence of the trip. Now, Phil, we had a cold open question. I don't know if it was last week or the week before about when you started planning, right? So generally, I think we both said it usually happens when we decide when we're going back, right? That's when the magic starts. That's when we start planning. That's when the magic starts. So how long does it take for you to lose the magic and become Disney depressed after you come home from like the main vacation, not the weekend vacation or the quick one, but the main family vacation? How long does that magic last you when you get home?
Interesting question. I'd say you do kind of ride that high for a little bit. You're still talking to everybody. If you're doing a trip report afterwards, that can kind of help stretch out the magic a little bit, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I think, probably after maybe 2 to 3 weeks, a month at the most, then I'm kind of like, all right, that feels like that trip's a long time ago and kind of back to regular life, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it could be as early as a week for me, depending on my work schedule and how much back to the grind I have to get to. But I think 2 or 3 weeks. I think you get back. You're kind of happy that you're back. Everybody's kind of happy to kind of get back in the daily grind, and then
Disney trips are usually a little tiring anyway.
You need a vacation.
You kind of need exactly, yeah.
So I think typically, depending on what our weekend schedule is like, I think a week after we get home or 2 weeks after we get home, we go through the pictures, right? So we sit down on the weekend, we get a glass of wine, the whole family sits down, and we relive the trip that we just got home from, right? So we're checking out all the memory maker photos that maybe we haven't seen as a family together, that type of thing. I know for our last trip, even though it was 2 days, we waited for my mother to come down, and she kind of relived the whole trip with us, and we kind of basically told the story of the whole trip step by step by the pictures, and that was kind of fun. But then, yeah, after that, it kind of dwindles until you start booking your next trip.
Exactly.
So the issue, the premise of this question is there's a lot of people saying that the magic is gone from Disney, or at least greatly diminished. And I I must have put on a rant of like 1,000 lines in Discord with the premise of this. And it essentially kind of comes down to this. Part of the magic of a Disney trip is the anticipation, in no matter what kind of form that comes in. But there's some different, milestones up to your trip. And Disney, in the past, has done a fantastic job of getting you to anticipate your trip. And because some of that stuff is gone, magic bands are gone, the ADR days are gone, all this, ADR is so close up, that type of stuff, like that whole process. A lot of people hated it, a lot of people loved it, a lot of people are indifferent about it. But I think Disney's doing a great disservice about building that anticipation for the parks. And because the magic is, for at least for us Disney fanatics, is not there, that the trip, the trip was still fun, right? There's still magic. We're not denying or saying that there isn't any magic at Disney World. We still go down there and love it, but maybe it doesn't start as high. We're using the word high on purpose for a lot of these things because it is addiction. But would you agree that some of that magic is lost in your trip?
I think so, because it used to be everything was sort of all-encompassing, right? You would book your trip, but you book where you're staying, plan your days. Like you said, you have the ADRs at the 180 days. You're thinking about, you're looking through menus and stuff like that. And you still have that, but it's only at 60 days. You're not getting the free magic bands anymore in the mail. Like getting something in the mail was always exciting. You're not getting your Magical Express tags anymore. Now you're thinking about, there's no Magical Express. How am I getting there? Am I renting a car? Like it just seems more like there's more busy work and less exciting things to book, if that makes sense. It's more like things like you have to, like it's just a little harder, and that makes it a little less fun, where everything else seemed to be more fun in the planning.
Well, for me, it was, okay, the magic starts when you, like we said, when you say, okay, it is now January, we're going again, February of 2022, or we're going December of this year, so 11 months out type of thing. And you book your trip and you're like, okay, here we go. So your ADR days 180 days in advance. Maybe we're now at day 250, whatever, throw a number out there, right? I personally, my family, my wife rolls her eyes at it, but she enjoys it. I sit down with the family with like a whiteboard and we go, it says, all right, we've got 7 days. What would make the ultimate Disney trip? Right? So we talk about it. This is where we decide what we did last day. What parks go when? How do we go in the morning, in the afternoon? Do we do a resort day? Do we do a pool day? And that kind of coming together as a family just to talk about Disney builds the anticipation, builds the match. Do you do that something similar? Even if it's just with your wife? I know your kids are getting older now, so they can start including them in a lot of those things.
We definitely do. It might not be like one setting where we get the whiteboard out and stuff like that. It might be several things of like, okay, what's coming up? What do we want to do? Are there specific places you want to eat? We definitely ask the kids, what do you want to ride? Where do you want to eat? And like kind of make sure we kind of factor that in and stuff like that. So maybe it's not as structured as yours, but it definitely happens. And it builds the excitement. And then when it's ADR day, they find out, did we get it? Did we not? Like that sort of thing. It's exciting.
So I'm a project manager, so I like to have all the dates. If I can, I would create a Gantt chart if I could, if it was easier than my spreadsheet. But we'll go. I think for our 2019 trip, up until the ADR day, we were meeting every other week. I think not meeting, that we were just, it was something to do because there was nothing on TV, so we decided to start talking about Disney strategy, so to speak. But that's gone right now because you don't know what days you're going to be able to get park reservations for. You don't know. I mean, you could say, okay, we're going to go to these parks or whatever. You're not going to be. We usually don't buy hoppers, so we can't even think about. I mean, that whole thing is out the window for us anyway. So the next metric, like you said, is the 180-day mark. So you have a plan, right? You know when you want to go to everything. So you start executing your ADRs at 180 days. This is the next milestone, right? So you've been having some drinks and meeting with the family or doing whatever you normally do to kind of plan out your trip, and you got that low background buzz of magic, right? Yeah, you kind of have a good hour meeting with the family, talking about previous trips, what worked, what didn't, and then you go in, you set up your ADRs. You don't have any park reservations. You maybe, like you said last week, you use what ADRs you get to help you kind of navigate where you're going to go.
Yeah.
So you have all right, I got my ADR. Then you go, okay, how can I manipulate it? Did I get what I wanted to get? All this other stuff. But again, you get this low background magic, right? Is it the same for you as far as that feeling of magic?
Absolutely. And I also think even beyond the family, when we have, communities like we have with our Discord server or other message boards or just, local friends that we know, you're soliciting some advice. Hey, we're thinking about eating at this place. We never ate there before. What do you think? And so you kind of group in your larger Disney family, for lack of a better word. And then like afterwards, everyone wants, well, how'd you do? How was ADR day? Like, did you get everything and stuff like that? So I think it's definitely like still simmering, and it kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm not somebody who has, a million friends that I'm always talking to. So this is something that, we have in common, a lot of times. And it kind of is something that helps our relationships and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I didn't even consider that. And I should have. I mean, there's, for example, Disboard's a huge community. People would come on and ask for tips. I used to spend hours on those message boards giving people tips. What are the best ADRs to go to? When do you want to do them? How do you get new ones? And we do this on Discord as well, but just to, we don't have 10,000 people on our Discord server, so the magnitude's smaller. And our Discord is distilled into Disney vets anyway, so they don't need as much as advice as a regular message board. But yeah, I mean, like throughout the week, you would drop hints, and that would get you to, fine tune your own skills and get you thinking and all this. So that kind of build up of your next trip with other people was also another low key way of magic. And that kind of doesn't happen anymore either, because not many people are looking for tips. There's not much to strategize on because, your ADRs are only 60 days out, and that's your first time, or park reservations are first, and then ADRs at 60. So, okay, so now before, again, you got your ADRs, and now you've got your trip plan. Now you start thinking about fast passes. Granted, fast passes were only 60 days out. And so now you had another 120 days you had to wait. And then we went low key. We just kind of like, okay, most of it's ironed out. And then it's just your normal anticipating the trip type of stuff. We used to do vacation calendars. So we'd get a big giant poster printed up with calendars on it. And we put stickers on each day counting down to our trip. We usually do it we did 6 months once. That was way too long to have a calendar up on our wall. This time we've done 3 months, but we've had 2 canceled trips, so it hasn't been the best one before. But again, we did something like that. And then was your 60-day, I'm going to use 60 days rather than 30 days just for the sake of the argument. You had 60. Now you have booked your fast passes. You are now locked and loaded for your vacation. There's no change in anything. You're ready to go. And then, I don't know about you, Phil, but I got juiced up for my upcoming trip at that 60-day mark. I was ready to go. What about you?
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. Like once you kind of get those, especially if you get, kind of what you wanted. And even if you didn't, you kind of like, okay, no, I didn't do that. So that means I'm good. I didn't get Mine Train. So we're going to rope drop that day because we're going to rope drop Mine Train or whatever it is. It kind of really helps set the schedule for the individual days up even more. So I definitely think so. I think the other thing from having that further out planning, and this might be a little contradictory, but the fact that news would come out during like even that 120-day lull, like maybe they're opening something new or something's closing, or like there was always something coming on that like when you sort of had something set up that you might have to adjust or adapt to or find out something's changing or there's a new menu here or something like that. There was always something new that kept you on your toes and maybe had to adjust your schedule and stuff like that. But I do think that fast pass day, that was always, even more than restaurants, probably, getting input from the kids on like, well, what do you really want to ride? Everyone pick one ride for each park that you really want to ride. Mm-hmm. Let's try to lay out this day and then find out, did we get the fast passes or not?
Well, another key point of having fast passes selection, if you go ahead and you did it, you started planning your day at the parks. You started doing your touring plan, right?
Yeah.
Without needing to book fast passes the way it is now, you're not touring. You're not planning a touring plan for each park. It's basically, I don't know what I'm going to get. We'll talk about Lightning Lane. That's what everybody else is talking about right now. So we'll talk about that in the second part of the show. But there's no need to have a touring plan, or other than a generic touring plan for each park. Like, okay, I know when I go to Magic Kingdom, if I have 0 plans and a blank slate, I know what I'm doing for that day. You have a certain set of rides that you rope drop, and then you're at the mercy of crowds and lines. And that's basically what you do. That's all it is right now, right? But with fast passes and refreshing, you kind of started like setting that kind of juiced me up too for the trip, right? You started thinking, okay, do we go here? Okay, we rope drop this side of the park last time, our second Magic Kingdom day. Did we rope drop this other half? And how do we make sure we hit everything up? That's completely gone as well. And now, I think this is a low key huge influencer for a lot of people. And Disney stupidly canceled it, was sending out free Magic Bands to every on-site guest. And I think that was a huge, like, you knew when you got that box with all the confetti, and it's like, they're all lined up. You open up the box, it's like a little treasure chest that you opened up, and it's like, my trip's in 30 days. And then, I don't know about you, but I just kept repeating, trips in 30 days, here we go. My trip's in 30 days, here we go. I mean, that was like the starting gun of my vacation, that 30-day mark, because as soon as you got the Magic Bands, you knew like you had to start getting your ponchos ready, your first aid kit ready for your back. You started packing. You're like, this is for real now. We're going home, right? It's starting with these Magic Bands, and that is how big of an impact on that build up magic, where the loss of those Magic Bands to you, Phil?
So maybe less than for other people. We didn't always stay on property, and we would always buy Magic Bands anyway, and we're still buying Magic Bands. But I totally get what you're saying, that arrival box, whether it had Magic Bands, whether it had the Magical Express tags in it, or whatever it was, getting something like tangible makes the trip seem more real. And it seems like Disney's shifting everything to be more digital. And I'm not anti-digital, but it's like you can't really hold it in your hand the same way you can a Magic Band or a Magical Express tag and stuff like that. So I think, like you were saying, that really makes the trip seem real when you have that. Like, we're really going. This is really happening, and let's get excited. I
mean, I don't care if even if they took away Magic Bands, they sent you like the Magical Express tags, which can't do that anyway because there's no more Magical Express.
Right.
But like, if they sent you something other than like a postcard or something else like that, like they sent you like 5 pins. I don't know. It could be some tchotchke that's for like you could make for 50 cents, like whatever. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything expensive, but it's announcing your trip coming soon. And I don't think Disney does that, right? I know they might send you a letter, or I know they definitely send you an email, but I don't think they send you anything that I know of. But I haven't gone with a package since 2019.
Not like definitely not like in the past. So it definitely feels like something missing.
And there's definitely a loss there. And again, that was a big part of the magic. The kids got their bands. They saw them. You can't touch them, but you can look. You can't touch them, but you can look. And then and then you were off to the races. And then that was your build up. The Disney bubble, as people like to call it, if you're staying on property, started to kind of surround your house a little bit. It kind of bubbled around your driveway to the airport, or your car as you're driving. I mean, like it had that feeling. So there's two things on here outside of not having those points. ADRs at 60 days. Nope, that's the only thing you have to do pre-trip. And then the park reservations now are at what is it, 180?
Well, you can do that. You can make park reservations as soon as you get your tickets.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah,
you can do it. Whatever, 400 days in advance. Yeah.
So if you're getting that package early, you have no problem picking park reservations at all. But if you're booking 9 months out or whatever, and you got your park reservations, you still have 200 days or whatever to your ADR days, and do they really match? Do things need to change? Now, when you're 60 days out, you might not be able to get the park reservations that you want if you needed to switch some things. So that lends to some frustration, I can imagine, for some people that really wanted to eat a certain place and they can't get it. So I think that's instead of I think that kills the magic more than people complaining that I don't know what I want to eat 180 days out, because that was a common complaint, like planning 180 days out. I know. I was listening to Jim Hill and Len Testa's podcast. Jim Hill hated booking ADRs 180 days out, or fast passes 60 days out. He's kind of like an old school guy where he just wants everything done that day, which leads me to Genie Plus, and we're gonna talk about that right after Attractionality. But now you have to wake up at 7:00 in the morning to get your first Lightning Lane or individual Lightning Lane, and you're forced to do that. Wake up and stress about getting what you want for your day early every single day of your trip. And we're going to talk about why that's stressful. Is it worth it? What would we do differently? That type of thing. That's what everybody else is talking about right now. But like, how does that affect you? Like having to wake up that early, because you've done it a little
really
bit, right?
Does. Yeah, it really impacts me a lot, and stress is the word. And I know my non-Disney friends would always say, like, isn't it crazy how much work you put into planning and spreadsheets? And it's like, yeah, but A, I enjoy it, and B, it sort of spreads out the stress, for lack of a better word. It's like, yeah, I stressed about my ADRs, but then I knew what I had and what I didn't. I stressed about my Fast Pass Pluses. I knew what I had and I didn't. I could set up that day. It made the day easier because there was a bit of a guide. Whereas now it's like, well, this is what I'm going to try for, but I don't know what that return time is going to be. And there's some problems where it seems like you click on it, but until it actually goes through, your time can change on you. And that just adds so much stress. It reminds me a little bit of our Disneyland trip, which was a little right before Max Pass came in, but it was sort of like the old paper Fast Passes where you had to run around, get the Fast Pass, but you didn't know what that return time would be like. And so, when we went there, I didn't know if we were going to get one for Radiator Springs Racer, and if we did, what time it would be for, and stuff like that. And I certainly get how that can add to some spontaneity, but I don't think that seems to be happening with Genie Plus too much. And to me, it's just that stress of like now waking up at 7 a.m. to see what I can get, what it's going to be. It's like all that stress that was there for boarding groups for Rise of the Resistance, like for everything now.
Oh, it's the worst. I remember I've only done boarding groups once, and you actually got it for me, because if it wasn't for you, I would have been like, crap, I couldn't get it. And because I think I hit it and I was already sold. It was already sold out or taken, and it was just like, but I think it's because you nabbed it. I had some other error on my screen. But that being said, every day you got to wake, and it's not even for like headliner things. It's just for like whatever you can get. Like it doesn't have to be even like, I got my Mine Train or I got my Flight of Passage or my Rise. It's like Peter Pan, Pirates, like whatever, right? It's not a big deal. And people, this is what always confused me when people complain about ADRs at 180 days advance. Yes, I know you don't know what you want to eat, but it doesn't take that long. You wake up at 7:00 in the morning, or you'll wake up at 10:00 in the morning, and you get on and you do it. And typically everything is still there except for a couple key things. Mm-hmm. But you book them, and then you go about your time. The 60-day fast, you book 3 fast passes. Just book them. You can change them, do whatever you want to do. And it wasn't that much thinking in my part, right? It's just you just do it, and it was fine. I hate the fact, because I love doing that, because just like you said, your vacation is planned. I want my Disney vacation to be, I want the least amount of choices and the least amount of decisions that I have to make while I want to make all that head work done by the time I go there. I want it to be an all-inclusive, here's all the awesome activities, like somebody planned it out for me, and that someone was me like 6 months ago. And that's fine, because all that hard work was done. Now it's extremely stressful. So kind of ending this whole conversation, Phil, the planning for your trip, I'll compare it this way. So you went down for the 50th, right? We didn't have Genie Plus at the time, so you've had nothing to plan for other than where you're going to eat. So combine that with the everyday of trying to get the boarding group type of thing, compared to your upcoming trip where you don't have any park days and you're kind of doing some other touristy stuff. How did the magic feel kind of building up towards? I would imagine there might be more magic without the stress-freeness of your upcoming trip versus worrying about everything for October 1st.
Yeah, so that's a good way of putting it. And I will say that we've also been booking our ADRs. We're staying off property, so we have to do it each day. And we're not doing every day. We're looking for a few things that are at resorts, since we're not doing park days. And I'll actually be waking up in a few hours to try to get one more. And I have to say, it's still been fun. It's still been like, that's kind of bring back a little bit of that magic and that excitement and stuff. And it's still talking to people about different ADRs and stuff like that. It just feels a little bit more muted than in the past, I think. So I don't want to say like, like you started off, it's like the magic's not gone. No, this is still has magic and it's fun and it's exciting. It just feels a little bit more muted compared to what it used to be. And so it does feel a little less stressful for this next one. Obviously there's a couple things we want to eat at, but we'll see if we'll get them or not. But yeah, we're not worried about parks. We're not worried about touring parks. We're not worried about Genie Plus. I mean, I think part of it with Genie Plus is it's the unknown, right? Like maybe if I've done 10 trips with Genie Plus, I won't really mind it because I'll have adapted or whatever. But without knowing it, it's definitely a weight off my shoulders to kind of say, I don't really have to worry about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, before we start talking about Genie Plus, because that's going to be a heavy topic for our second one. Let's tell everybody where they can find us on YouTube and everywhere else on social media.
Yeah. So our social media accounts, Twitter @PodDBC, Instagram, the DBC Podcast, Facebook, DBC Pod, and our YouTube channel. Thank you, everyone. We now have our custom URL. Yay. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/thedbcpod. And I am going to try to spend some time, I think, trying to get the other names of our social media more similar to that one versus everything being a little bit different. So that'll be my task for the upcoming week.
Well, the funny part is we hit 100, I think, about a week ago, right? On Monday, Tuesday, I believe. And then the option to get a custom URL just doesn't appear. I think it takes a couple days to make sure it wasn't a fluke or something. You don't trust us. But it popped up, and I want to thank everybody for making it happen. I know the folks on Discord. It definitely wasn't Ryan Teets that made us the 100. I think he was one of the oldest followers. But I know, oh gosh, I'm trying to scroll up here. I should have had this on ready for it. But somebody gave us a follow that made us 99. Oh, Skier Pete made it 98. Lumpy made it 99. Shout out to them. And I don't know who the 100th person is, but I want to thank you to that person. As we go forward, we grow ever slightly, a little bit here and there. Okay, so for this week's attraction now, we're going to go right to it. It is Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin. Not today, Zurg, but it's Lightyear's arch nemesis from Toy Story 2 is stealing batteries from helpless toys to power up a new weapon of destruction. Become a junior Space Ranger and help stop Zurg. Board your XP-37 Star Cruiser in the voyage deep into the Gamma Quadrant, where you'll take aim at the glowing Z targets with your infrared laser cannon. Use your cruiser's joystick to spin a full 360 degrees so you can blast all the targets in sight. I like this attraction, Phil. It's a good one. So this should be an interesting conversation. Mine's a little all over the place, despite me liking it. So flashing on the screen for you guys watching at home. First question to you, Phil, is how much do you like the concept of this attraction, which is a hybrid midway style shooting game and dark ride themed around Buzz Lightyear's universe battle with Zurg?
Yeah, so it's funny looking back at what I voted on this, because I think we did this a little while ago. I guess I was feeling a little salty that day. I have some lower scores. But actually the concept, I think Toy Story, it obviously works with Toy Story Mania as well. I think it's a way to get like kind of these shooting type games, but still be family friendly. Mm-hmm. So I think that, and I think kids overall like something where they're doing something active. They're not just sitting there watching something. So overall, I think the concept's good. I don't know if it's perfectly designed. I give it a 4 overall, but I think the concept of a shooting game involving Buzz is a good one.
I gave this a 5. I love the concept of being immersed in an area, cool dark ride, and it's interactive, right? Mm-hmm. So they got a bunch of these at Disneyland and at Disney World. And again, something that you can keep score and compare your scores to last time or with your family, have little competitions. I think it's a pretty darn good concept. Granted, maybe I should have given this a 4 because it's not like the ultimate ride like a Soarin' or Flight of Passage, but it is what it is. Anyway, moving on to the second question. How well do you think Space Ranger Spin delivers for its target audience? This is where I think we might get flopping around in scores. So what'd you give it?
So this one I actually gave it a 1.
Whoa. You're the
I think there were 2 people I think gave it a 1. But I don't know. I was the one person who gave it a 2. I gave it a
Correct,
2.
yes.
I'm reading. Okay. So I gave it a 2. I just find the ride frustrating. Um, it's hard to tell where the laser's going. Half the time it doesn't work. I guess maybe I'm just bad at it or whatever. But like, I know it always has a long line. Like we do it and it's fun, but I feel like afterwards we're just more frustrated versus like Toy Story Midway Mania, where I think it just works better, and we're always like happy getting off that. Where I don't feel like we're always happy getting off this one. So maybe there's a target audience that loves it, but for me, I think it underdelivers for what it could be, and maybe some of it's just the execution. Like if it was updated with better technology and it worked great, it would be better.
I gave it a 3 for very similar reasons. I don't like the queue. I don't like the building that it's housed in. I don't like the area. I mean, I'm not a fan of Tomorrowland, as you guys know, and because it kind of just like, here's just a bland building with like a sign in front of it. Come on in, and there's no outdoor theming for this ride that makes it cool. Unlike the one in Toy Story Land, which is fun and it's light, it's colorful. There's stuff to like look at. The kids like see the things on the ground and on the walls. This one is dark and kind of, I don't want to say grungy. Grungy is not the word. It is clean, but it's just like, reminds me of like an 80s arcade at a mall type of thing.
Yeah,
that vibe.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah,
and the ride, like you said, it's an older attraction, but it could be upgraded. It could look a little bit more fresh. So I'm usually disappointed with that. Question number 3: how much do you personally enjoy Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin? I'm just going to go off and give mine. It's a 3 also for very similar reasons to question number 2.
Also gave this one a 2 for basically the same reasons as above.
How well do you think Space Ranger Spin fits into Tomorrowland and Magic Kingdom? I gave this a 4 because I like the attraction, the idea of the attraction, and it fits within that area. So it's a 4. If it was a better attraction, it would get more higher.
I give it the same. So it's kind of interesting that our scores actually weren't that different in the end.
No.
I think, compared to other things in Tomorrowland, it fits pretty well, the concept, especially if you're going with kind of that retro Tomorrowland look. It kind of has like that Buck Rogers and sort of like what space travel and fighting aliens and stuff would be in the future. So even if it's not maybe what Tomorrowland should be or could be, I think it fits at least a version of Tomorrowland fairly well.
Tomorrowland's not even Tomorrowland anymore. Tomorrowland's just a catch-all for space attractions at this point. Because it has nothing to do with new technology and everything anymore. So, or our vision of what tomorrow is. And that's a question for another day. So that's attraction. Now, we had a bonus question. I think you changed it a little bit from what's on screen now. Why don't you go ahead and
Yeah, so for our bonus question, I put, so I think we like these, in theory, these shooter style attractions, even if this one isn't our favorite. So I said, well, what other like IP would we like to see them create a shooter style attraction for in the parks? Like, for example, they just came out with Web Slingers out in Disneyland California Adventure, and that's similar in that you're not holding a gun, you're using your arms, but it's shooting at a target. So I was just wondering if there's any other IP we thought could make a good shooter style attraction.
I've got 2. Right, so the original attraction, I'll give credit again to one of my favorite Disney podcasts, the Disney Dish, and Jim Hill was telling the history of some of these ride vehicles. So originally they were making a vehicle for Disney Quest, which was you sat in a ship and you pulled a string to shoot, a cannon, right? So but I would love to see a pirate's version of this, shooting cannonballs from pirate ship to pirate ship. I think that would be pretty cool. And of course, the obvious one I think is a Star Wars version of one of these attractions, where you are sitting in the gun of the Millennium Falcon and you're racing away from the Death Star and you're shooting TIE fighters. I mean, how could that not be the most ideal shooter? I mean, again,
or even just like in-person one version for Star Wars, where you're like using like a Han Solo blaster and kind of
even shooting stormtroopers. Like sure, I mean I think that would be awesome too. I just don't know if they would ever make a ride where you're shooting people at Disney World. That's why shooting TIE fighters is kind of like ambiguous enough as it is. I mean, you could probably say the Millennium Falcon ride is a kind of a shooter like this a little bit.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's instead of. It would have been nice if we could pull the trigger and you're aiming versus just smashing lighting buttons on the side panel as you're kind of going through it. So, okay. There's a bonus question that Castaway or Caststone said was comparing the East Coast with the West Coast. I've never been to Disneyland, so I couldn't answer that question.
I like the Disneyland one. The main thing is you can lift the guns out, and you just feel like you have more control, and the aiming is better and stuff like that. So for me, it's superior.
So what is everybody else talking about now, Phil? Because this has been ongoing. This is not just this week. It's been like for the last 3 months. So
yeah, so we're trying to think of how do we group this together, and how do we also just not go down the path of hating on everything, like kind of be more neutral, think of the positives and the negatives about this. But really what's been talked a lot is how Genie Plus, Lightning Lane, all that sort of stuff is impacting your visit to Walt Disney World. Obviously looking at, is it working better at Disneyland versus Walt Disney World? There's a lot of stories about the wait times matching up, that Disney is overinflating the times, and that is this really looking to upsell you, or even the free version of Genie that's saying, oh, by the way, the ride's down. Instead of directing you to another ride, they're saying, hey, would you like to build a $200 lightsaber while you're waiting? And things like that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different angles to this. Did also want to mention, there was some news in that it looks like Disney learned that for Thanksgiving week, it was really a challenge using Genie Plus. They've learned, and for this holiday week, they've moved 4 of the rides that were individual attraction selections. So they moved Everest, Runaway Railway, Frozen Ever After, and Space Mountain. Those are now for this week, specifically from December 19th through January 3rd, are part of Genie Plus, so part of that $15 versus having to pay for them individually. They've also extended the early entry from 30 minutes to 60 minutes. So I think this is, said we want to highlight the positives. This is Disney seeing there was a problem before and trying, to adjust at least for this crowded period, see if this works better. So there's some news, there's some movement, but it's really been a lot talking about it. And then I think the second part of what we'll chat about is what are ways that we think could change it that might make it better.
Well, here's my question. Do you want to start with the positive changes to make it better, or do you want to dive into what everybody's talking about is really the negative?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple of the positives. So some of the people riled up on Discord a little bit was with Matt Pato, who we mentioned before. He used it when he was down there, around Thanksgiving week, and he said it worked really well for him. They bought it. They bought a couple of the ILLs. They were able to get on what they wanted. And then other people, seemed to use it. They got some value out of it, even if maybe it wasn't totally worth it. This is kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but our DBC Recommends of the Week is another podcast that's called the Disney World is Awesome podcast. And one of the guys on their show went down over Thanksgiving week too. And he had, day one, they were with, some extended family in Magic Kingdom. They didn't buy it. And then their next day was at Epcot. They decided to buy it, and they loved it because they were able to just get on stuff, get through things. They were buying, individual lightning lanes for everything. They were definitely spending the money, but they found, day 2 versus day 1, they got so much more out of it that they thought it was totally worth it. So there definitely are some positive takes out there. So if you are one of those people, don't feel like you're the only one that, it can probably feel like people are ganging up on you a little bit with the negative takes.
That's what happened to Matt, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully, I know he did do this because I was talking to him in DMs, but I like a good heated debate. So I went after him on the positivity. In abstract, being able to book it and use it is a good thing. It should be a positive enforcement. You were paying for a service, and unfortunately, you should be able to use it to your benefit, right? I think we have to use the metric that you have to at least get 3 good positive rides. Going to match the old fast passes. Like 3 was good. If you can get 6, that's even better. Sometimes that's kind of tough to do. And Matt said, I spent the money and it worked out. So my part of my contention is you're spending the money for it, right? So that's kind of the magic stealing aspect of it. And I guess we're diving right into the negatives because I just mentioned it. I don't like that you have to spend money on it, but I get why Disney's doing it.
Sure.
But, well, let's do it this way. So you're spending money on this, right? So you are now expecting a service. People were talking about in Discord, I think it was Jenny, she mentioned the proximity of purchase really matters. If I had to spend $75 a day for my family to get this, but I paid for it when I bought my package, so this was already paid for, I don't think I would be as angry just because the cash is already out of my wallet and I know I have it, right? Which I expect Disney to do, start adding it to packages and stuff like this in the future. So That's one element of it. I would have it so you have to buy this not the day of. So maybe it's $10 a day if you buy it 6 months in advance or part of your package. But if you buy it the day of, it's $15, something like that. Is that one of the ways you would change it to make it more positive?
Yeah. So, and also just to kind of keep the positivity, I do have to say, I feel like I was one of the few people that was trying to be optimistic when this was announced. I thought there was a way it could improve the experience for everyone going, because my thought was, well, now that you have to pay for it, less people will be getting it. So there should be less people in the fast pass queue. So they should get on quicker. And also because there's less people to take from that queue, the standby line should go quicker too, but that hasn't happened. So I think, my thought was, and also this way, if I'm staying off property, I can just choose to buy this versus hoping I could get, things at 60 days. So I was like, okay, there's a way this could be better. And I guess some people maybe are seeing that, but for the most part, it's not, because of the aspect that it's maybe you're able to get the same thing you got with FastPass Plus, but that was free. When you have to pay for it, your expectations go up for the delivery of it. And
especially when you have to work on it, right? Because in order to fully utilize it, you need to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning or slightly before and get ready to pound that app to get your first lightning lane. Then you have to set alarms for every 2 hours so you can start overlapping some of these things, and the stress level. So that's another thing I would change, is get rid of these waking up at 7 a.m. type of aspects. And I'd probably change it so that the only way you can book them is if you're in the park.
Okay. I mean, that's similar to Max Pass and stuff, how Disneyland worked before.
I mean, I don't want to wake up and then quietly open up my phone when my eyes are still groggy. I don't wake up that early when I'm waking up getting ready to go to the parks. I don't want to have to wake up and already be disappointed that I'm not getting on the right line. Another way I would improve it is get rid of lightning lanes altogether and make everything individual lightning lanes, but then you're paying a slightly less expensive price, or a variable depending on attraction. So if I want to pay $2 per person for Peter Pan or Teacups or whatever sea ticket attraction there is, I'd prefer it that way, I think. Because this way I don't pay $15, I just use regular Genie, and if I just want rides, I'll spend $10 here, $15 here to skip the line.
Yeah, that's one way I think I would change it with. I think this combination of having the Genie Plus and then a couple other rides that aren't there makes it confusing, makes it like I'm spending some money here, some more money there. I think if it was one or the other, it would be better. Because then you have more things.
Too many layers.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one thing I would change that. I see your idea of just making everything the pay per ride, almost like a back to the ticket book system.
Yeah.
My big thing though was, and we probably should also give some shout outs to the Defunctland video about the history of FastPass and stuff like that. But one thing that always struck me by it is when it first started, the idea, it was for a handful of rides. It was just for some of the e-tickets that got the 2-hour waits, and you could get one at a time, and then you just didn't have to wait in those 2-3 hour long rides. That's how I would go back to. I would just have it for a handful of rides, whether they're bundled together or individual. But things like Haunted Mansion, Pirates don't need a fast pass ride. They just keep, and that was the biggest problem, or the biggest issue that Disney did with all the previous systems, was they said, okay, well, there's too many people to buy what we have, so just add it to more things. And that was another news item this week, is now you can get parade viewing for the Christmas parade, which is going on now during the regular park days. You can get a Genie Plus for a viewing area for that. And that's what they did in the past. They added it for meeting characters, for watching parades, watching fireworks, and all of a sudden everything had it, and you were just getting them for whatever you could when a lot of things didn't need it.
And this is part of the debate that Matt and I had going back and forth, because it was triggered on being able to buy viewing areas for the parade, right?
Yeah.
To me, that's complete BS, because everybody can view. You just got to find a spot and you can see the parade. And often some of these parade viewing areas aren't the best viewing areas for the parades. I know they had like a Tiana dessert party to watch the fantasy parade, and you could barely see the parade from the steamboat, so you couldn't really see it. But if that cost, was it like $40 a head or something else like that, in the middle of the day type of thing? And to me, it's just like, Disney's now acknowledging that the system stinks and people are complaining about it, and it feels bad when you pay for $15, and if you're not optimizing the system with alarms and overlapping, you're just using it like, oh, I'll pay $15 and I can get on some, and you just open up the app, nothing's available, Teacups is available, and you're like, why did I pay $15 for this? I got like 2 things, and they were definitely not worth $15. So the guest satisfaction rating is what needs to change, and by adding things you can click on and get, that makes you happy. Hey, I'm special. I get to watch the parade from this VIP area. It makes you feel good, and that I'm not going to call anybody a sucker for doing that, because if you feel included in an area that it's not as crowded and it's a nice.
You don't have to wait as long maybe to get that view and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you don't if to get good viewing areas, you have to go like a half hour before the parade, an hour before the parade to kind of get a primo spot. But so that might make you feel better. Matt brought up, well, didn't you get meet and greets on Fast Passes? And I'm like, I use Fast Pass meet and greets all the time. But it's because I knew I could get the 4th. If that was my 3rd one, I know I could get a 4th one, and then a 5th one, and then a 6th one. And I wasn't spending money on it. And it was, there's a lot of this. Always came back to money for me, which is the value of getting. Granted, I've never used it, and I don't think I will be using it on my upcoming trip, just because my sister's not going to be using it. And if we're kind of meshing together, I don't think it won't be a good trip if we're all kind of doing different things at different times. So what did other people on Discord say? Phil, you've collected a couple things.
I think the number one thing that people want is a modify ability right now, and kind of a number of things related to the times when you pick a time for an attraction. Because right now, you go to click it, and then while you're like cycling through to confirm it, if other people click it, it automatically like pushes back your return time. So there's been some people that their time's been pushed back several hours, and it went from a time they could use to a time they couldn't. But then you can't modify the time, even if you could want to maybe try for something later. I think the idea of being able to select your time like you could with FastPass Plus, people would want, versus just being stuck with whatever the next available is. And again, then you can't modify it. You have to cancel it and then hope you can get one again. Other people are like, I think maybe it's just because people got used to how FastPass Plus worked, but like, Amanda said that she would just make it the FastPass Plus system, but charge $30 a day for it if you want. Basically just decide people can use it or not, but it's basically you could book them in advance and that sort of things, And I would say the one other thing that a lot of people ask for is the ability to re-ride rides. That's one thing that's limiting in this one. You can only use Genie Plus once for a ride. So even if there's availability when you go in, you're not allowed to pick it again. So that's another thing people would like to see.
The tricky thing is typically you're getting these lightning lanes for a future time that's not immediate. It's a couple hours from now. I think another change, and Disney should be doing this, is if a ride window is just starting. So let's say it is 10:30 or 10:40, and the 11:30 window is still has, let's say, for a not too popular ride, and it's got like only 50% of the lightning lanes have been used. No one's using them or picking them up, type of thing. They should be pushing, hey, by the way, do you want a free bonus lightning lane this hour? We've got space. Come on in, type of thing, to make sure you're filling up all those lightning lane slots. And I think people would actually appreciate that, because that'd be a little bit of pixie dust, right? I think they should be doing that anyway, right? So digital pixie dust, you get a notification on your phone saying, hey, we'd like to give you a free lightning lane reservation if we see that you're in Adventureland and, Jungle Cruise. I think that's another way that they could be using the system to create guests feeling, oh, I got a bonus lightning lane. And then you can get all the crazy vloggers and planners like, okay, where do we have to be standing in the park and at what times? And like there'll be some strategy around it, but like that doesn't cost Disney anything as long as you have the app. Because no one really cares about the augmented reality pictures or the story type time things that's going on with the base Genie type of thing. Because you spend $15, people want an experience out of it, and rather than just being your own personal kind of scheduler that it is right now, that's rather frustrating. It doesn't really make sense. Phil and I, for those of you that weren't in Discord, that Phil and I were trying to make a flow chart of how the system works, and it's nearly impossible to do something. It's kind of
there's too many like variables and
So I had a couple things queued up on a web browser, but I didn't show it because we just basically talked. Anything else about this? the Genie Plus as it is right now. Okay, let's do this. We talked about what we think they should change. What do you think Disney will actually do within the next, let's say, 6 to 8 months?
I do think they'll add a modify button. I think they will let you modify your existing Genie Plus selection either to another ride or a different time for the same ride, just like you used to be able to do with Fast Pass, which I believe that was actually added. That wasn't like with the launch of Fast Pass. That was like added later. So I think there are some things they will add, like little things like that. I would like to see some of those pixie dust things. I think where you feel like you even if it's small, right? But like you get a little extra thing, say, hey, we added this to it. Doesn't count against your allotment or whatever. So I think that might get added.
Do you think Disney would actually do that? Give away those free things? I don't think they would do that.
I think I could see it because they used to do it with the paper Fast Passes, where if you got your card back, you would get a bonus. You would get one for the ride you wanted, and then you would say, hey, here's a bonus Fast Pass for another attraction. Usually it was Mickey's Philhar Magic, but it was like a lesser.
That is a good point. Yep.
Yeah.
I forgot that they had done that. Okay.
Could be something like that. And then I mean, this is kind of just I guess a pricing thing, but I do think we'll start seeing it included in packages, and they will start either giving it free, like they did free dining. Now they might be free Genie Plus promotions, or just like, here's a package and you won't necessarily be able to tell how much it's being charged, but it'll be promoted like the bucketed price is cheaper than if you bought everything individually.
Yeah. I definitely think the first thing that we'll see is some small modifications with Disney, like they're testing over the holidays, adding more attractions to the baseline, adding more ills, taking them away, adding more stuff to the base feature, just so people can like book teacups and the Lightning Lane type of thing. It could be relatively easy to do because all those extra lines are there. This physical queue spaces are there for a lot of that stuff. So I could see them, watch Defunctland. They're going to start adding more and more and more to feed the beast, right? Because it's basically the same system. You're just paying for it at this point. So it's going to follow the same trajectory. I almost guarantee it. But I think the first real thing we'll see, just like you mentioned, it's going to be added to packages. So it's going to be like, now they're going to force users to use it, which is going to basically destroy the whole use case for Lightning Lane to minimal. They want less people using it, spending money. So now what might happen was if they're truly more limited than the original Fast Passes. So let's say for every hour an attraction, it gives out 100 Fast Passes. That's not the number, but let's say 100 Fast Passes for an attraction. I think they wanted Lightning Lane to be like 30 to 50. So it's truly limited, and it's not impacting the line at all. And they're just going to inflate the number of people that have access to Genie Plus, which therefore is going to influx, going to cause starvation because more people, less things to book, and then all of a sudden they're just going to keep adding more and more, and it's just going to be the bloated Fast Pass system again with just a different name. But I'm pretty sure that's how Disney's going to do it because that's the wrong way to do it. So they're going to do it that way.
And the other thing that I think it might work out if they do it right is give more of an advantage to people that stay on property. Right now, the only advantage is at 7 a.m. you can book your individual Lightning Lanes. Other off property can't. So yeah, if you start embedding it as packages and stuff like that, and then maybe raise the price for people off property or something, that's discouraging them from getting it. So it's actually more of a true advantage to people that stay on property, something like that. But I guess
one of our favorite cast members in Discord, Julie, she would want it bookable by everybody at 7 a.m. The same day. But I could see Disney saying, okay, you stay on property, you could book your first this is Matt's idea. You could book your first Fast Pass the day before or the week before or whatever for each day that you're going there. I don't know how that kind of works out from an operational standpoint, but I can foresee them as either not as many people are buying it, or it becomes too much of a guest relation nightmare for complaints that they're just going to basically start shifting this back to the original Fast Pass Plus system. Not original, but the last Fast Pass. And then it's just going to be why did you spend so much money doing this type of thing? Because wasn't the original premise of this whole system was to design your day at the parks and make it like the best day ever? Like you just follow Genie Plus all around and it's going to give you the most amazing thing because it's going to direct you around the lines and whatever. And like you said at the top, it just doesn't do that.
No.
And I think somebody had it in Discord. Somebody was doing this in Disneyland where they were kind of following around. And we talked about when Len Testa did it with a bunch of his guys doing different combinations. But like Disneyland, it was like, here, these are my 6 favorite rides. And by like 2:00, none of those rides were recommended by the Genie Plus, touring plan, and it was just like, so I think they need to tighten that up a little bit.
Yeah, the free not the Genie Plus, but the free Genie touring thing. I had low expectations for that going in, and it managed to not meet those low expectations. Like, it's really bad.
Even like telling people you should order lunch now, you should go spend $200 on a lightsaber now. It's not even doing that. It's way too blatant because even a person that doesn't know how to tour a park, it doesn't know Magic Kingdom, it's like their first or second time there. Even you could look at this and be like, this isn't right. Like it's not satisfying at all. Like everybody's getting on that ride over there. I could just walk in right over there. You're not telling me that I should be doing these things because reality is not matching the itinerary at all.
Exactly.
So I think they're going to hopefully be working on that. So at least I don't mind if they want to toss out like ways to spend money. I mean, it's a business. They got to do that. I have no problem doing that. But I hate the blatantness of like get the people on like 4 or 5 attractions and do it well before you start asking.
Well, I think that's the biggest problem is it seems to try to want you to do all these rides that have low wait times. Yeah, because they're the lesser attraction. So nobody's rope dropping the Swiss Family Treehouse, right? So yeah, you did Swiss Family Treehouse and Carpets of Aladdin and you got a bunch of stuff done, but they're not the things you asked to do.
Yeah.
It's waiting to have you do those later in the day. And I think if it did it the reverse, where it's like, hey, we got you on all those 6 rides you wanted, and it's not even lunchtime. Everything else is kind of gravy. Now listen to us, or something like that. I don't know, but
Len did a test on touring plans where he married the attractions that Genie was telling him to go on with their. They've got like a satisfaction index from all the whatchamacallits that they do, the surveys that they do with their customers, and I think the satisfaction index was extremely had all the lowest satisfaction index rides. People's least favorite rides. That's what they just pushed everyone towards, and I think they need to kind of fix that up a little bit. All right. That being said, we have Disney World is Awesome podcast as our DBC recommends. I've only listened to like 1 or 2 episodes of this show. It sounds like this is one that you're more familiar with. So, what kind of show?
Yeah, it's one actually Matt recommended. It's one he really likes. I've only listened to a handful as well, but I enjoyed them. I think it's 3 dads talking about going to Disney. So if you like this podcast, you'll probably like that. If you like the 2 of us, you'll like the 3 of them. It's like one more person.
It's well put together, right?
Yeah.
They're not talking in phone booths. It sounds good. It's not forced or anything else. It's a well produced show.
And they're definitely not doing news of the week and stuff like that. It's very much like, here's our trip report, or I think they had an author from a book on and things. So it's much more, you can listen to whatever episode whenever you want, and it's just I don't know, they just seem like fun guys, and they enjoy it. I think they have pretty positive takes on things.
And they're not Uber planners either, because they get things wrong from time to time. Like they're not Disney experts. Like they know everything. I mean, obviously they love Disney because they're doing a podcast about it. Yeah. But they're not like, don't listen to them and be like, no. Like you never do that ride before this ride. They do it to have fun. You can kind of it's nice to see somebody that's not like, how do we set alarms for this and get the most out of it? They just enjoy it, which is nice.
I will say that is one thing that I did kind of comment. I was like, well, that's incorrect. That's just like when things that was open. No, that wasn't open. Like like that type of thing.
So thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for letting us hit 100 on the YouTube channel. Next week is New Year's, so Happy New Year's to everybody, because you're not going to hear us until the new year. Next week's show is all going to be about the look back in 2021. Some of the predictions we made a year ago. I can't believe it's been we can actually do one of these shows. Like, what did we predict a year ago? We've been doing this a long time now, and then we'll make some predictions. I don't know what we're going to predict, but Phil and I will come up with a couple things that we talk about to predict and forecast for 2020.
If there's something you want us to predict, give us ideas of things to
because I think we did some before and after type of things last year too. So we'll pick out some hot topics from the community. We'll go on Discord and ask about that. That being said, guys, have a great week, have a great holiday, and Happy New Year. We'll see you next week.
Bye all.